But anyways, we're live on Facebook now. I'm here with Ross Simmonds. Ross, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ross Simmonds. I'm a digital marketing strategist and entrepreneur. I'm the founder of a handful of different companies, but the main company that's taken up the vast majority of my time right now is definitely called Foundation Marketing. We're a B2B content marketing agency that helps essentially B2B brands drive growth through content creation and content distribution.
Nice. And so I wanted you up here because you've done a lot of speaking, a lot of content. I actually bought your little training on content.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it was cool. As a course creator myself, I
Right.
fully realize we can talk about it a little bit more because I think it's important,
Right.
especially in our space. Course creators can sometimes get looked down upon a little bit.
For sure.
But I fully believe that if you have valuable information, then some
Right.
people should pay for it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And I was trying to support, and it was only like $30 too, so it's not like a big
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks
deal.
for checking it out.
But I did want to talk to you about content promotion. It's always been, I think, a thorn in a lot of marketers' sides.
Mhm.
I think that the landscape has just changed too. I got started doing this almost 10 years ago, and I
Right.
started getting my first little bit of exposure through Facebook groups,
Right.
where, you could used to be able to be really effective in terms of creating a piece of content. And basically what I was doing was just seeing what people are talking about. Is mainly about link building. I would write a blog post about it, do a video, post it there.
Yeah.
It built a little following there and eventually took it off there.
Right.
Things have changed a little bit. We've moved more towards a paid model,
Right.
just because I found it to be really difficult to scale. And that's really what I want to
Right.
talk to you about is
Yeah.
I think a lot of people know that they need to promote content. They know how to,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things where it's very time consuming, and
Right.
it's not quite at the place where you want to hire somebody full-time to do it in-house or
Yeah.
outsource it because they don't fully get it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
how do you as a busy marketer approach content
Right.
promotion?
Yeah. So the challenges that you're describing is consistent with most people in the industry, right? Like at the end of the day, when it comes to content distribution, it is very, very difficult to scale. And because of the challenge of scaling it and the challenge to scale it is primarily related to the fact that, okay, sure, you can spend a week in Facebook groups, but are you able to track ROI? Are you able to track the fact that because you were in that Facebook group, you were able to increase rankings? Those types of metrics that we all hold ourselves to in the traditional marketing world just don't apply when it comes to content distribution. So it requires a different type of thinking around the investment in content distribution, around taking a step back and saying, why are we doing this? It's not just because we want to see an increase in our number of our amount of traffic to the site. Like social traffic or referral traffic isn't always the number one goal. It may simply be the fact that now you have a presence in this community and you've established more trust or you've built a stronger relationship. And sure, oftentimes, especially when you deal in a world primarily of quants where we're talking about rankings and factors and all of that stuff and backlinks, and that's what we're thirsty to try to get, it feels a little soft to say we're doing this to build trust, but that will make it easier to run paid campaigns and et cetera. But that's the reality of it, right? Like the content distribution isn't solely meant to be a traffic driver. It's supposed to also facilitate the decrease of the cost per click. It's going to result in a decrease in the difficulty of ranking because you're building up more credibility, more authority, et cetera. So content distribution in my mind is as much of a traffic play as it is a brand play. When I think about some of the organizations that have done this extremely well, one of the ones that comes to mind right away is SaaStr. And SaaStr is a venture capital company who tries to simply find great SaaS companies that they can invest in. And their CEO, Jason Lemkin, went into Quora strategically knowing that this was a channel where his audience was spending time to find questions and answer questions that they had about raising money or scaling a software product. And what he would do, similar to what you did in the groups, he would identify the questions that SaaS founders were asking, and he would answer them with the most valuable information possible. And because of that, he was able to establish an influx of subscribers to his newsletter, people who followed him on social media, people who followed him on Quora. And throughout all of this, he was definitely plugging content on his site and referencing assets that he had developed over the years, but he was putting in the work. And I think that that's key. And it's very difficult to scale because you do have to spend time, right? Like I always say in marketing, there's two things you can spend: money and time.
Mhm.
And there's no question that when it comes down to it, spending money is a very scalable way to kind of reach your audience consistently. Because you can run ads on Quora, you can run ads on Reddit. You might get yelled at if you don't do it right, but you can run ads on all of these platforms. But when you go in from a distribution standpoint, it gives you that organic connection with the audience, and it can have a very powerful result.
So, so you mentioned that the CEO of the company was doing it. You
Yeah.
know, I think of a busy SaaS company versus a SaaS startup. It feels kind of like a growth hacking tactic. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
I mean, is this something that you think, is this something that you would recommend? Like, who do you recommend that to? Is it more of like
Yeah.
a young company, like you said, that doesn't have the money to spend,
Right.
or pay someone? I mean, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so I think it can be done at both scales. So we've done content distribution as an agency for big brands who recognize the same way that they're paying other agencies to go out and get them backlinks. They can pay an agency like us to go out and just be their voice in the various communities where their audience is spending time under their name, under their alias, and having conversations with people. And that's been extremely valuable. Like if you can think of an audience in their community and people who they really want to build a deep connection with, oftentimes what we will do is train people on their staff, let's say a customer success person, to understand how they can distribute that content and work with them closely on a regular basis, helping them identify opportunities that they should respond to, and then providing them to them so they can jump in and respond. At the same time, I do agree, like when it comes down to the up and coming early companies, it can be very difficult to make that decision that we're going to invest in content distribution. I think in those scenarios, you need to think a little bit more strategically around how you're going to approach it. So for example, if you say, I'm going to invest in YouTube videos, and that is going to be the lane that as an early company, you're going to focus on, the content distribution for that is going to be very different from if somebody was embracing content distribution for a blog post. With that YouTube video, you're going to take that video and you're going to chop it up into different assets. With that YouTube video, you're going to ensure that you're embedding it in different blog posts that are already ranking on your site. With that same YouTube video, you're going to go into a few questions that are very, very similar and answer that question in Quora with the same answer, plugging that YouTube video. So you're going to take a different approach in that sense, where you're trying to find the low-hanging fruit with that same asset that you've developed.
So that service that you offered to that company, was it more
Mhm.
of a training and consulting, or like was your staff actually
Yeah,
going like finding core threads? Like what is that? And
yeah,
this is actually a kind of a self question for myself, because
for
back
sure.
back when I was, you know, we're still the agency, back when I was running the agency full time, content
Yeah,
promotion was something that I really wanted to try and bake into our SEO service, because
right.
especially for a new website, I wasn't comfortable just hammering a website with links.
Yep,
I wanted to build in my mind what was more of as you alluded to, a natural organic presence. And
right.
I figured getting on a Quora or Reddit, like where the conversations start, that
Hmm.
feels more natural to Google than all of a sudden
Right.
just getting featured on, you know,
Exactly.
blog posts, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
but we couldn't figure it out because I had to offshore it.
Mm.
The offshore team, they were good writers, but they couldn't fully
Yep.
understand the product. I mean,
Yep.
Quora, especially Reddit, even more so. You have to
Yep.
be able to write like like it's hard, man.
It
Like
is
it,
hard. A hundred
a lot
percent.
of time. So we couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out. Like, what does that service look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we have so it is hard. So we train for it. First and foremost, when people join our team, we have like a content distribution lane where they learn how to do content distribution our way. We talk about the importance of understanding your brand's voice, etc., fully immersing yourself in their world so you can understand it. We do have some clients that are super technical, and in those situations, we will advise them and tell them, look, we can't figure out your world, so we want you to do this. In those situations, we train them and we allow them to have access to us for advice and recommendations on how they can be more organic sounding with their content. But if it's an industry that we can get, which is for the most part, most SaaS organizations or most B2B brands, like in those cases, what we oftentimes will do is we just learn as much as we can about their industry, learn as much as we can about their customer, and then we do go in on a consistent basis and we identify opportunities and we respond to them, we create them, we manage that entire process start to finish. It's no different in my mind. So like if I was to back up a bit, my original entrance into marketing was social media.
Mhm.
And that was through like the Facebook and Twitter and managing a bunch of accounts on Hootsuite back in the day. And then evolving into, and while doing that, writing my own blog content, which opened my eyes to SEO. And then I just started to kind of evolve into a marketer who could do a lot of different things. But I started by selling social media retainers to clients. And I think with the content distribution side, the same people and the same ideas that go into social media management and that same like belief system that if somebody is managing our Twitter community and building trust with people can apply to content distribution. And I think that if you can, I think at the end of the day, because some people or certain types of people can see value in that, that it's easy to sell to them. It's very difficult to sell content distribution to an SEO. Like that's a tough one because that's not the world that they play in. But when you have that conversation with the CMO, when you're having that conversation with somebody who's a more digital generalist or somebody who's a social media manager or something of that nature, it becomes a much easier conversation around content distribution. They get it.
Yeah, that's actually, man, that's actually really smart. I never thought of it. Like I was always trying to use writers and bloggers to go out and like find stuff,
Right.
but
Right.
in reality, if you really think about, especially now running the Blueprint in a software company, I understand how smart our support people are.
Right. Right.
They know more
Yeah.
about they know more about anything than we do
Right.
because they're answering questions about it every day. And now that I think about
Exactly.
it, damn, I wonder if we could put one of our support people on like core
Right.
affiliates because
Yeah.
they know this stuff better than I do at
They
this.
know all the answers. That's the thing. It's like you throw them into even the Facebook groups. Like I've seen some of these folks like get trained and go into Facebook groups and just start to crush it. Like they're taking screenshots from products, answering people, like having meaningful conversations in generalist style Facebook groups, but they're generating results off of that. And you're seeing like 20 likes on a comment again, like we used to back in the early days of the Facebook groups. And it's because you're putting experts in these communities. And the same thing happens on Reddit. Like if you go into some of these niche communities on Reddit, one of my biggest tips to folks before you jump in is to always sort the content by the top posts. And when you do that, you're able to see what is the type of content that people on Reddit actually care about, right? Like you're not going to go into an entrepreneur subreddit blindly and just start thinking and assuming that you can add value to that community. The best thing that you can do is sort the content by top posts, reverse engineer what the top 50 posts were, and then use that to inform the type of content you're going to deliver back to them. What you can also do is click on that rising tab, see what content is rising quickly because you know that content's going to be hot and that content's going to stir up conversations. Then you jump into those and you identify, okay, are they asking a question that we can answer? Yes. Okay, let's get that over to the expert on our team to write the answer. Or if we can answer it ourselves, you jump in and you deliver that value.
So you mentioned a couple times that we're obviously talking about content distribution, but
Yeah.
how are you also informing them about what type of content to create up front, or are these
Right.
sometimes just brand conversations like somebody's just looking
Right.
for some you teach them to search for a core thread about
Yeah.
I don't know, software dev best practices. I don't know if
Right.
like if you were working with a software dev shop,
For sure.
do you always make them link back, or if there's no like talk
Yeah.
to me about how content fits in, then also kind of like I guess your linking strategy when you're promoting this stuff.
For sure. So it does, there's a direct relationship with every asset that we publish. So with us, what we do is when we press publish or we deliver an asset to a client, whether it's a blog post, infographic, calculator, you name it, it also comes with what we call a distribution, a distro doc is what we call them internally. And it's essentially the document that breaks down how that asset should be distributed organically. That could be, we're going to reach out to this Medium account and we're going to seed it through there 3 days later. We're going to go to LinkedIn and we're going to seed into these LinkedIn groups. We're going to keep an eye for 30 days on this Facebook group to see if there's any questions about this. And if there's not, then we're going to seed that question into the group. And then we're going to start to respond into the questions with this blog post. So we map out with every asset that we develop a distribution playbook that goes with that asset. And then we act on it for the client. When it comes to a retainer relationship where we may not be creating the content at a frequency, what we will do is we'll take an audit of content that has been published in the past and then start thinking strategically of how we can redistribute that content. A lot of brands make the mistake of pressing publish on a post in 1999 and never sharing it again. I think you need to relook at that content and think about how can that content be repurposed and reused. Stop always trying to create something new from scratch. Like there's so much value that has always already been developed. Let's take that content, repurpose it, let's remix it, and then let's distribute it. And if that content on your site is still valuable, let's link to it. If it's not valuable, then we need to talk to whoever manages your content. If it's us, we're going to find time and a way to update that piece so it's relevant in 2020, 2022, whatever that may be. But if you aren't, if that content isn't relevant, then so be it. We're not going to link to it, so to speak. That dog gave me a heart attack too. Don't worry.
Sorry, I have a cleaning person here, so I'm locked in the room with me. He's not
nice.
Anyways, how do you price out a service like that?
Yeah, so it's definitely based. So we're interesting in the fact that everything starts at a fixed rate, and we just bill based off of that. So we have a line item for content distribution that is a fixed rate. But if an organization states like, yes, okay, foundation, we want more than your typical distribution relationship, then we have the opportunity to scale that up or scale that down. But typically, just for the distribution alone, it would start at $5,000.
And what is your like mix between local and offshore, or is everyone local? Like, what does your staff look like?
For content distribution, it's all in-house, our team. We haven't outsourced any of that at this point. We do outsource like video chopping up. So like when it comes to like chopping up a video, we don't have somebody on staff that does that, but we have partners who we work with for years who will take that video, put the transcriptions on them, and they'll chop and skew for us. But then we'll do the actual distribution of that content, writing the descriptions, writing the titles, et cetera, making sure it's click-friendly, et cetera.
Got you. And in regards to, is all your promotion tactics, are they organic? Are you advertising it all in there too? Do you recommend that they advertise? How does that fit in?
I 100% recommend people pay for ads as well. Like I think that I was talking about this the other day on Twitter. I think it's super risky to go all in on paid. I think it's super risky to go all in on organic. I think the same way that you would diversify your stock market, like your investments there, or your kids' RESP, or whatever it is that you guys have down in the States, like you want to ensure that that's diverse. So I think when it comes to content distribution, you have to be diverse as well. You have to diversify between paid and organic and have a blend of both. And if you don't have a lot of money, I always tell people, at the very least, invest in remarketing. Like remarketing is one of the most ridiculously effective yet underrated channels that still blows my mind, doesn't get capitalized on. Like if somebody is on your pricing page, you can't let them just disappear. You can't. You have to run ads remarketing to those people. So I 100% believe that there's a blended approach that you have to take to this thing. And at the very least, from a paid standpoint, remarketing is where it's at. But I'd be curious, like you're killing the paid side. Like what's your take on paid and where it fits in the mix?
I mean, so I like to use paid as, it depends on the business, right? So for the Blueprint, right, we're selling a very expensive training product, $3,000.
Yeah.
In an industry that's very skeptical. So we need paid to get in front of people consistently, right? Like I do these as a means to also selfishly to bring in people like yourself who come with a certain level of authority and bring, you're basically lending me your authority by coming on here. It's a mutual relationship, obviously, but and then I'm able to take this and then push that in front of your audience, right? So this is kind of the extent of our organic strategy. Honestly, like the SEO on that website too is not something we focus on. We're paid first because we understand that we have to go out and seek out those people, and we want to control that conversation too. So we actually use remarketing as a means to put different forms of content. So like,
interesting.
If you go to our website now, you'll then start getting remarketing our blog posts, right? Because I know too, just the nature of that business, that coming to the website once is not enough to purchase. I have to then hit you with some of our best content, either sequentially and then, capturing. So like we just kind of bounce people around in our remarketing system with a number of different ways for that company. For our other company, Coding is for Losers, we just set up some ads yesterday where we're basically using that to just go out and start promoting case studies. So for that, it gets a good amount of organic traffic. And then again, we're remarketing case studies, but also pushing some of those case studies that are a little bit more story driven to cold audiences that will relate to those people. Right. Then we have a WordPress plugin called Capture and Convert, where we're using, that has to be like almost all organic because the CAC on that is so low. It's $20 a month to use the program that the software, that we can't go out and spend $5,500 acquiring people,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So that we're focused heavily right now on outreach,
Yeah.
on referral strategies, on getting some affiliates up. But also then just basically to you said, like, if you come to that website, like you have to get a remarketing ad to purchase after
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
in that sense, that's much more like the remarketing is bottom funnel. So point is, I just
Gotcha.
want to change there, but
Right.
it really
Yeah, no,
depends on
that's
the
good.
business. And I think a lot of companies don't understand, they just don't understand the full customer journey and how to use content throughout. I think we're all talking about the same thing, whether it's paid or organic, it doesn't matter. To me, I look at marketing as simple, you know, technical things aside, and assuming that your product or service is good, right? That's
Right.
an assumption you
100%.
have to make. After that, it's all about building content and getting that content in front of people. That's all.
It.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And from there, I just break off spokes in terms of what type of content, where that person is, the video, blah, blah, et cetera. And then also paid and organic strategies, right? And then also like owned and earned channels, all that type of stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I approach that, and I just look at SEO as a distribution channel off of content as well, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think everything when it comes to marketing is really like it's paid distribution or it's organic distribution, and the way that you can do it, like the sky is the limit. There's no limits on the way that you distribute your content. It's just a limit on time, which is why so many people do rely on the paid, because it can work for you while you sleep, versus the organic side, which is the downside, is like you can only distribute in Quora, you can only distribute in Reddit when somebody's actually got their fingers on the keys, and they're pressing publish or answer that question, which is definitely a challenge. But at the same time, it's, I think it might have been Paul Graham who had that quote, like, do things that don't scale. And I think that like content distribution is one of those things that doesn't scale well, but the return on investment can be significant long-term, especially when you unlock a channel that nobody else is trying. Like, I'll take you back into time a bit again. Like when SlideShare was hot, I was one of the very first marketers to get on that channel and start uploading SlideShares. Like I remember investing like more than 50K before anybody was using it to really upload beautiful designs. And we were able to get like millions of people viewing our content. I was able to get my first Fortune 500 client from that. It was amazing. I even went to a conference in New York, and Diddy was a guy who worked with Diddy was like, I taught Mr. Combs how to use Snapchat off of one of your SlideShare presentations. I was like, this is wild. Like, this makes no sense. I'm a kid from Nova Scotia just uploading these things. And it just blew my mind. It was because I found a channel where no marketer was spending time doing things differently. I was taking old blog posts that I had written, turning them into a graphic for a slide presentation, and then just uploading them. And they started to take off like wildfire. So I was early. I jumped into that channel. I was distributing content frequently, and I was able to generate like hundreds of thousands of dollars off of that investment, right? And that was it. And I think you can still do the same thing today if you can find those channels where nobody else is. Like Reddit, to me, is still a massive opportunity that is underrated. Quora is getting saturated, don't get me wrong. I haven't invested much time into TikTok, so I don't know much about it yet. I still think Instagram's also like a sleepy giant. I recently invested just $500 because I wanted to see like whether or not I could still grow my following through like paid influencers. So I paid a bunch of influencers, $30 here, $20 here. And I was like, share my video on Instagram, tag me. I want to see if this grows Ross Simmonds brand. And I was able to get like 500 new followers for spending $500. The ROI wasn't what I thought it would be, but I tested with it. I experimented. And I think that you can find partnerships on Instagram to drive massive growth if you do it without kind of that paid transaction there.
Yeah, I got really, really into Instagram a couple months ago. I actually hired this kid who I paid him like $3,000 a month. It was expensive for like, he only helped me with Instagram, but he opened my eyes to all of the stuff. I actually have a really good interview with him on my YouTube channel if anyone's interested. But
cool. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, you should. Because I mean, honestly, when it comes to Instagram and TikTok, like you got to work with the kids, man. They know.
Right. So true. So true.
But to your point about the white space, what I found was that there's something so special about the SEO industry, for better and for worse. And one of those things, I mean, it just is what it is. Like people on like SEO professionals don't really fuck with Instagram. They prefer Twitter,
100%,
which is cool. But that doesn't mean they're not there. It just means like they're not using it to build any sort of presence or even posts. They're just kind of using it to consume, which is awesome, because what that means is there's less noise. 100%. And what I found was that, you know, especially, so like if you have a product, having a training course, Instagram is great because you can a lot of the younger kind of like
Yeah.
generation SEOs and who want to learn SEO are on there. So
Right.
point is, I hired this kid and he just opened my eyes to like the type of content that has to be created, how to optimize your content there,
Yeah.
like how to use like the copy on Instagram is so important.
Right.
You know, even like it's not enough to just cut up content anymore. Like you should
Right.
be creating content specifically for that
Specifically
platform.
for it.
And
Yeah.
that's where this really gets tough to scale, right? Is
It
because
does. Yeah.
the Gary V model that he published a while back, I think it's dated itself already, because
Right.
it's not enough to film one webinar video and then
No.
one long form video and cut it up.
Right.
It has to be, and he's just gotten so masterful. He when he gives his talks, he's like purposely like taking like a 5-second break, and then he says a quote that he knows is going to be cut into a 2-minute clip.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? And he knows that. So, but
Yeah.
but again, it's not enough for us normal folks to just create a
No.
2-minute video and then cut it up. Like you actually have to go out and understand who the audience is, how they're consuming on Instagram. It's a whole different thing. That's why I haven't touched TikTok, because I have it and I look at it and I'm like, do I have to start dancing on?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, man.
So true.
I don't know if I'm ready.
I hear you. I was on there and I was scrolling through. I was like, I'm officially old because I like don't get it. One of my team members, she put up a TikTok and she's like dancing. I'm like, no, I think this is a channel Ross is not going to be using unless I can come up with something. But yeah.
I mean, I think it will mature. Like there's a lot I do listen to about Gary Vee, and I think he does understand trends better than anyone.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And I mean, TikTok is something to watch, but I think from a creator point of view, it's not something like there's just, again, to your point, like don't sleep on Instagram. It's kind of like peaking in a sense, but like
still works.
Instagram more than anything, you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
You know, so YouTube too. I mean, LinkedIn has kind of gotten popularized, but I mean, they're all there, you know, and mature now and ready to be taken. Like, I'm not worried about it.
And I think like there's still opportunity on all of these platforms in my mind, like, especially from a content distribution standpoint. I think as a marketer, it's important to know how to work all of the different channels, right? Like you have to be able to know enough to be deadly on them. But for individual brands, you don't need to know every single tool. Like one of my friend's dad always used to say, it's better to have one good kid than a bunch of bad ones. And I 100% agree. Like when it comes to social media and content distribution, if you can be the best at LinkedIn and own it and drive results from it, double down. Like if you're able to own that channel, double down on it. Like there's no reason for you to start investigating Snapchat if you're killing it on LinkedIn and you can't increase your number of headcount to have more people investigating these channels. Like marketers have to know it all, but a brand individually, all you're trying to do is like, let's own this one channel, get as many leads, as many prospects as we can from it, as many customers, and just keep milking the cash cow. Like I think it's important to have experimentation in your DNA as any type of organization. But I can respect those who say LinkedIn is where we're great and we're only going to be great on LinkedIn. I 100% respect that.
Yeah. And I get it too, just because number one, I mean, for a number of reasons, like maturing in my career, I fully understand the value of focus now.
Right.
You know, not trying to do too many things, be it starting a new company or a new blog, detracting my focus from my big things. Right.
Yeah.
That's also true with marketing channels. Right.
100%.
And to that point too, is it's really hard to reach scale on like Facebook, you know, or on LinkedIn. Like there's billions of people on that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of opportunity there. And even more than that, it's not always about reaching new people. It's about reaching the same people in the right way, you know? So I 100% agree that it's incredibly powerful in really just, you should know everything. But I don't think you necessarily have to be a master in Instagram and TikTok 100%. And SEO. I think you can master one thing and then understand how they all correlate. And then, and as you grow, to your initial point, you either put in the time or put in the money. As you grow, pick up the money, then you hire people, you know who to hire. Like if I need a content promoter, I know where I'm going. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
Same type of thing. So yeah, I mean, in just the amount of opportunity on each platform, it's immense.
It
is.
Don't
have to know everything, you know?
I mean, you don't. I think I think that mentality of like, okay, let's become great at it, then on to the next one is the mentality you have to have with it, right? Like you have to say, I'm going to become extremely good at Reddit marketing. And then you generate scale. You are figure out how can you generate results from that channel consistently 365 days a year. And then when you can do that, then you say, okay, now I'm going to experiment with something else. You don't have to go all in right away, but you start to slowly experiment with it, and then you can continue to expand that. When you're a brand though, and you're publishing content on a regular basis, I think that's when you have to say, okay, when we press publish, like this is what most brands do. They press publish, they send it to their email newsletter, and they call it a day. Like, I think that model is broken. I think what we need to do is have a system in place where the person who presses publish on your content may also be responsible for writing the message that's going to go on your LinkedIn channel. They're going to also be responsible for identifying the medium publication that you're going to submit this content to. They also have to be responsible for ensuring that your creative team or your social media management team is putting a story up that's going to promote this piece of content. Like, you want to ensure that you have a plan post publish. Most people don't. They think the job is over when they press publish on a piece of content. And that's wrong. Like, that's when the job actually begins. And the faster that brands can start to embrace that idea that that's when the life cycle begins, the faster they're going to be able to see long-term results from their content. Like, we all have had that blog post that has its quick spike immediately, generates tons of social traffic, but doesn't take off from a SEO lens. Mm-hmm. Don't know why. Maybe it was just because it resonated with people emotionally, etc. People are still the same emotional people. 6 months from now, 1 year from now, if that piece of content resonated with people in December of 2019 and you were able to get 4,000 people to engage with it, I'm pretty sure you can find 4,000 people that will engage with it again in March, unless it was like a reactive piece that was relevant only at that time because you were talking about something that happened in the news or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something I want to talk a little bit more about scale. And there's a really good book I read a couple months ago. I think it was The Marketing Rebellion by Mark Schaefer. Have you heard of that?
Okay, no.
Okay, worth reading for sure.
Yeah.
He's like a corporate CMO type. I picked it up and I was like kind of skeptical, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this
right.
I don't know anything about marketing anymore.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. It was actually probably the top marketing book I read in 2019.
Cool.
Point is what he talks about is how channels are saturated. It's really hard to get in front of people, and what marketing now is becoming is about getting your customers basically become your main voice, right?
Right.
Have you ever done any work like that before in terms of like turning customers into promotional?
Yeah. So our audience is primarily B2B, and we rely heavily on sites like Capterra, Trust Radius, G2, etc., where customers are leaving these positive reviews. Mm-hmm. And what we strive to do is actually find out who's leaving these best reviews and then get case studies out of them, get testimonials out of them, and then also invite them into communities where we know people are talking about various topics. So let's say, for example, we're talking about inside sales reps or something of that nature. We're going to reach out to some of the number one G2 reviewers, people who love the product, love the brand. We're going to say, hey, there's this group that we're a member of and we think you would really enjoy, you should join it. And then organically, when somebody pops into that community and they say, what is the best lead generation tool for inside sales reps? They're going to start talking about your brand because you were the ones who invited them into this group. The group doesn't have to have any affiliation with your brand, but the fact that you've invited all of your people into that group means that you have a mini mafia in there that's going to start talking for you. And if somebody tries to trash you, you don't even need to say anything. You can sit back and watch your little army take care of it.
Yeah, it's definitely the way that things are going. I just think of this gym that I used to go to. They've just done, it's so crazy how much of an amazing job they've done of mobilizing the people that come in there and turning them into, like, they don't have to do any marketing because these people are, it's part of the physical experience that they created in the gym in terms of like creating these like Instagrammable moments that were a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool though.
Yeah, exactly. It works. And then also just like getting their trainers to buy in, just a really amazing thing. And now they just opened up like their 5th location in a couple of years. Awesome. And from what I see, it's based on that, and getting like these people to come. It's just crazy.
It is interesting. Like,
I mean, it's just, I see it's how you can, the only way that you can scale what you're talking about. Maybe not to the extent.
So how would you do that in like our world? Because like our world is different from a gym. Like in a gym, you're in person, like even from a course creator's lens, like, when you're talking about people who are not physically with you, like what would you think about from a way to get that type of a feeling out of people? Like,
Yeah,
virtually, essentially.
it's tough. It's tough, right? But with things like this, I mean, the way I see it, the more you create, the more you get in front of people, the more they feel
Mm-hmm.
connected to you, right?
Right.
What within the Blueprint training too, we have a Slack channel. There's about 1,500 people in there now too. I'm
Right.
in there every single day. Like to me, I spend a lot of time
Yeah.
on that one-to-one. I mean, I'm getting
Cool.
paid to do it, so I'm not like at that like
Right.
Gary Vee, like I answer every comment, but like,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's true. That's how you do it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, even though we're behind a screen, you can still connect with people, you
True.
know,
Yeah.
and at scale too, which is
Yeah.
great. So I spend a lot of time. I do these. I do one-on-one calls with the group.
Right.
Anyone who needs me, they can DM me, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Which creates a major sense of community. Plus, just
Mm-hmm.
hiring, like we've got really good community managers in there. Like nothing gets unanswered in that Slack channel within
Right.
5 minutes. You know, that's
That's
kind of
cool.
our goal.
Yeah. That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, it's huge. Plus
Yeah.
support, like all that type of stuff.
Right.
But then also, you know, it's really tough to get people to champion a $3,000 product, especially like a training course. It's tough. So, you know, I
Yeah.
just wrote a book publishing. It's actually, we published it this week, and the full version will be live next week. And
Seen that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what I'm doing is I'm really using that as kind of like a low cost way to get connected with people, and just
Cool.
tons of giveaways, you know, like take a
Right.
picture of the book, post it on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're still figuring out what like that's going to look like to be able to get
It's
people
awesome.
to do that. It makes sense for both sides. But yeah, I mean, just figuring out ways that you can engage the community.
Yeah. That
I
makes
think the
sense.
hardest part is building the community first. You know, I've been doing this for so long now that
Right.
I've amassed a small group of people who want to listen to what we have to say.
Right.
That's kind of the hard part. And then, you know, engaging that community is really just the next step.
That makes sense. No, that's awesome. That's cool.
But it's hard, man. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I spend most of my time on now.
It's awesome.
Is figuring out how to do that, because, you know, I already feel like my ads are for the Blueprint. They've kind of gotten to a point where I have kind of reached kind of scale at those, you know?
Yeah.
So just figuring out other ways to
Yeah.
just get people aware of the business. And
Right.
then from there, then the remarketing can kind of take over. But
Yeah.
like that top funnel awareness is the
Yeah.
hardest part for us right now.
Yeah, one thing that I'm noticing, and I haven't really articulated this much anywhere, but like one thing I'm seeing as a trend for like evangelizing people and getting them really to kind of love you and your brand is like the same way that everybody says things like just do it, or with Gary Vee and the like Daily V and all of those things. Like people are owning these little mini brands, and organizations are owning these little mini brands. Like I don't follow his stuff too much, but like I think Grant Cardone has a 10x thing. Like people are creating these mini brands that folks are associating themselves with that align with their like values and beliefs, and then they're going all in on it. And I think like the same way that D2C and brands like Supreme have like done an amazing job at connecting people with people emotionally, I think B2B needs to go down that same path if you want loyalty. Because I haven't spent too much time thinking about this, but I think across all software, I think it's going to reach a point where HubSpot and Salesforce look the exact same, and you're just going to make a decision based off of which brand resonates with you the most. Like, I think at a certain point, software companies are just going to keep copying each other, doing what each other do. There's going to be somebody who innovates first, then everybody else is going to copy. And the only way that you can make a decision between one product and the other is going to be which one's brand connects with you most. Like Drift versus Intercom, right? Like that's a great example. Drift has an amazing tribe around them with people who are super like wearing the Drift like flag, and they own it. I think the same thing is happening across many industries, even in the like content promotion, course creator world. It's a very interesting time. Like I think brand is going to become more and more important.
Yeah, I think to your point, B2B is a lot tougher because the other side of that, like you create content, you get in front of people, you connect with people, you give them one-on-one time, you make them feel valued.
Yeah.
Aside from having a great product, you have to have a great
right.
product.
100%.
Otherwise you're out of the question.
Yeah.
I think the other thing though, which is really challenging for B2B though, is having an opinion, right?
True.
When you put your opinion out, like, I mean, you just look at the States right now. I mean, who our president,
right.
he won that presidency, like,
right.
He understood all he needed was 51%, right?
Right.
And he was going to draw a line in the sand. Not that I condone him in any way, but like he was going to draw a line in the sand, and he was going to go all in.
Right.
On putting his opinion out there, knowing that it would resonate with 51% of the country, right?
Yep.
I don't think you have to go to that extent. I think that's
right.
just a case study, but it's more proof than you ever need that.
It's true.
You know, having an opinion. You look at a Grant Cardone, he's very polarizing. You look at a Gary Vee, very polarizing.
Right.
Like, but at the same time, they don't care because they understand. Like a Kanye West is very Kim Kardashian, very, you know what I'm saying? Like anyone who's who's reached that level of kind of
Yep.
clout. But the point is, it's really tough for B2B companies to do that.
Right.
Not even in the sense that like they don't want to have an opinion to offend people, but it's kind of like, how do you have an opinion? Like, how do you, I think that's why a lot of B2C companies are better, because they're able to align themselves a little better with some causes,
It's true. Yeah, for sure.
which can be challenging for B2B.
Right.
Again, you look at Adrift and putting their
But
people.
they had the like no forums thing, right? Like they were like
Yep.
anti-forums. So that's kind of like their approach to like, how uncontroversial or even interesting is it? We don't like forums, but they were able to make it cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, they're just, their entire marketing is great. Their
right.
branding is great. Having
Yeah.
Dave Earhart, on board.
Right.
Again, putting those people first, and just
Yeah.
the content. That's why, I mean, content is like still so important with B2B,
It's true.
because
Yeah.
it's kind of like that opinion piece that they can
Yep.
get in front of people to, align them with
100%. Yeah, no, I think you do have to I think even in B2B, you have to get creative around, okay, where do we stand and how can we be against a certain thing? Like Salesforce early stages was like, we are anti-software, like everything should be on the cloud. So they had like fake protests that were boycotting software. Like that was their thing. And when I say software, I'm talking about like floppy disks and CDs for those of you who are born in the 2000s and might not know. But like back in the day, that's what we used. But like that was their boycott around like everything should be on the cloud. And I think that type of approach can work in B2B as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So last kind of question for you. Most of the people that are going to end up watching this are agencies.
Right. Cool.
How do you generate leads for yourself? I know you do a lot of speaking engagements. I know you're also very well networked with a lot of people. Do most of your leads come for referrals? How do you generate leads for yourself?
So there's no question that the two number one drivers are when I'm speaking on stage and I'm talking about our beliefs around marketing, content distribution, et cetera. That drives a significant amount of leads, as well as when I press publish on new content on my blog. On rawsimmonds.com is where it all started. Like that was my original kind of hub, and I just published content about things I was learning in marketing. And then eventually I got to a point where rawsimmonds.com as a brand needed to evolve into an agency. So we launched Foundation Labs, where we publish content. And when we are publishing content, we typically get leads through that content marketing effort. So we truly do drink our own Kool-Aid in the sense that we tell our clients to create content and we create content as well. We tell our clients to distribute content consistently, so we distribute content consistently as well. And when we do what we tell our clients to do, it drives results for us. And we intentionally put our team on promoting our company just as much as we do as putting our team on promoting their clients and doing the work for the clients. So everybody on our team is actually tasked via a thing we call like the proactive dashboard, which we stole from Noah Kagan. Which is like, you have to create content for the team, you have to create company for the organization, as well as doing content creation and distribution for our clients that you're tasked with. So that's the number one driver, like content marketing, generating content, creating it. And then on the flip side of that, when I do speaking engagements, that often opens up opportunities as well. And then the one that every agency can kind of rely on if you do good work is, of course, referrals. So when we do great work, after we go down the path with a client and we're delivering results for them, they start opening up their network to us and making introductions. And that's where that whole idea that I'm kind of well networked has come from. It's because when we do good work for people, they start introducing us to other folks and build relationships from there.
And I had a very similar start in terms of like building a blog, promoting it, and then but that takes time. And I'm not telling you not to do that. I actually, in the Blueprint training, I have a sub training in our sales module where I talk about the type of content you should be building, literally kind of like our strategy here. But a lot of younger agencies especially kind of reject that because they're like, man, it takes too long, I don't have time. Do you think that you need to become, for lack of a better term, a thought leader in this space to really have long-term success?
I don't think so. Like there's tons of people who I know who are killing it and they're not thought leaders, right? Like I think there's different strategies that you can take to kind of win in the world of marketing. And you also have to start by defining what success looks like for you. Like there's many, like before I built out a team, like I did 275K when I was 27 years old, just bought an apartment. I think I was paying like $900 a month. And I was doing $250,000. Like life was good. But then I decided I was going to start an agency, and I continued to go. But there's no question I could live a very, very, very good life on 250. All right. Anyone could. But I think like you start there. You start by figuring out what you want to accomplish. And at that point, I was by no means a thought leader. I had never been on a MozCon stage. I never spoke at CIRSLab. None of those events had ever seen me, but I was still doing that type of revenue. And I think for any agency owner, first start by figuring out what it is you want to accomplish. Like, what's your goal? Do you just want to make 250? Do you want to make 150? Like, do you just want to make that first 100K? Like, what is your number? Figure that out. Do you want to build a team? Do you want to create a big agency? Do you want to build something that will allow you to take 6 months off and it just operate and pay you a dividends? Like, you have to figure out what it is that you want first and foremost, but you can do any of those things with different strategies, right? Like, my first jump into marketing was not just like, okay, I'm going to write the very best guest blog posts on all these sites. I started by DMing every single influencer and marketer that I could get in front of and just asking them to like give me 15 minutes of their time so I could have a conversation with them. And by having that conversation, they learned about my skill set. And then by learning about my skill set, when somebody came up and they were like, the only person I know that understands Facebook is Ross. Let me pass them along to Ross. And that started to kick things off from a like, especially outside of my region from a local standpoint, it was just DMing people and building relationships that way. So I don't think you need to necessarily be a thought leader. I do think you need to work hard. Like the whole world is starting to become anti-hustle, which drives me insane. But like you do have to work hard to be successful.
Well, you know why they're anti-hustle is because they're polarized by
that's true. That is true. That is true.
I tell people all the time, if you're not like, it's kind of like having a great product is a precursor to market. Like I can't market shit. It's kind of like
right.
This is if you're not working hard. And it kind of bothers me too that people reject that because I think he goes a little bit over the top. That's just his communication style. But
for
like,
sure.
He's not lying though.
No, he's not lying. He's not lying. You literally have to work hard. Like that is just the fundamental.
Like really it's really like
it is really hard.
Yeah, I mean it's really hard, especially that for those first couple of years.
100%.
It's hard. I agree.
100%.
Anyway,
and I think like if you work hard, you don't need to be a thought leader. You can literally send
no, I agree.
50 emails a day, and you can make this thing work.
I 100% agree. And to your point too, there's plenty of people who are doing very, very well who are not. Right. You don't even know about them, and you don't know about them because they're doing well. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's kind of like the affiliates. Like there's so many affiliates out there banking, you just don't know who they are because they're not trying to give up. It's like we are.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. 100%.
But anyways, man, I appreciate your time. Middle of a work day. Always appreciative of you guys coming on.
No worries.
Tell the people where they can find you at.
Yeah, so definitely check me out at rossimmonds.com, but also check out foundationinc.co. If you want some more distribution tips, check out rossimmonds.com/distro-pack. It's a free 100 tips for how you can distribute your content. Feel free to use that. It's a great resource that I think anybody in marketing or who has published content over the years can definitely check out and find value in. But Ryan, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate your time, and keep doing what you're doing. I've been seeing the blueprint everywhere. I've been seeing the grind and the hustle that you've been putting in, and I love seeing people help agency owners kind of break through and do great work. So keep it up.
Appreciate that, man. And absolutely everyone out there, make sure you check out his paid training on Well as well. It's $30, well worth it.
Thanks a lot.
Sent it directly to my team internally. We're using it.
I like it. That's awesome. Appreciate that, Ryan.
Thanks a lot, brother. Have a good one.
You too. Cheers.